Soon, engines will roar, fans will scream, temperatures will rise as America's elite racers return for 2018. 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com is proudly ranked the best college radio station in New Jersey by the New Jersey Broadcasters Association. Live from the Killarney's Public House Studios, this is NASCAR Nation.
And there's a fight between Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allen.
Years of trying, 20 years of frustration. Dale Earnhardt will come to the caution flag to win the Daytona 500.
They touch! Even you! 1,000ths of a second he beat Boyd.
Okay, a 60 checkered flag waving. It's over. It's Earnhardt.
Welcome back, NASCAR fans. A brand new NASCAR season is on the way, and we here at 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com are here to cover it. I'm your host, Joseph Cerro. Everybody, welcome back to NASCAR Nation. It's been a while, but before we begin today's show, remember you can follow us on Twitter at NASCAR Nation RU, and you can follow 107.7 The Bronc at 1077 The Bronc FM. This off-season, it's always painful, but this off-season, I think for a lot of NASCAR fans, begins a new era in the sport as we've seen drivers like Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Dale Earnhardt Jr. now retired. Danica Patrick, she has one race left. That'll be the Daytona 500, and she will call it quits with NASCAR. And as that comes along, 40 of the greatest stock car drivers are going to hit the high banks of Daytona to kick off the 70th season of the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. This offseason, a lot of changes were implemented, and we're going to go over those starting with the drivers. We have the changes in the schedule as well as much more. We'll start off with the full driver lineup, well, almost full. There were 36 chartered teams, remember. That means if they have a charter or if a team leases a charter, that guarantees them a starting spot for every race on the season. So if they choose to qualify, they're in. All of the following teams are chartered teams, and there are 5 more charters floating around. So let's get into it. In the 00, Jeffrey Earnhardt will race for Starcom Racing in the VRX Motorsports Chevrolet. The last year, he was in the number 33 Chevy, and Jeffrey Earnhardt in particular, not so much success, but keeping the Earnhardt name alive in NASCAR, and especially I think that's good for a lot of fans, and it's definitely something that the sport needs. Obviously, the unfortunate passing of Dale Earnhardt Sr. in the 2001 Daytona 500 in that vicious crash on the final lap, and now with Dale Earnhardt Jr., who has been the face of the sport ever since, retired, it's very good that Jeffrey Earnhardt is keeping that name alive in the sport, and it's certainly something that is much needed. Jamie McMurray will be in the number 1 Chip Ganassi Racing Chevrolet, sponsored by Cessna, as well as Gear Wrench. No changes for that team. Brad Keselowski in the number 2 Penske Ford. Only a few changes. So Discount Tire has been a long-time Xfinity Series partner of Penske Racing. They've elected to not only now join into they've decided to move across the board. They'll keep with the Xfinity Series program with that number 22, but they also wanted to move into the Cup Series. They're sponsoring 11 races on that number 2 Brad Keselowski Ford. So Discount Tire moving into the primary sponsorship. That familiar Miller Lite paint scheme will not go away. They have 10 races. Other sponsors for them include Alliance and Detroit Auto Parts. In the number 3, Austin Dillon will be racing for Richard Childress Racing yet again. Chevrolet, Dow Chemicals, AAA, a lot of returning sponsors. The only difference will be his crew chief. I don't believe they've named his crew chief yet, but they have said he has a new crew chief. So keep an eye out, check NASCAR.com for that and more. Number 4, Kevin Harvick in the Stewart-Haas Racing Ford, sponsored by Jimmy John's, Busch Beer, Busch Light, Mobil 1, all of his sponsors returning for the most part. No difference there. Trevor Bayne next in the number 6 Roush Fenway Racing Ford. Again, Advocare will be sponsoring him. He'll also have other sponsors as well through Performance Parts Plus. and no changes there again. So a few of these first teams, no changes. Here's really the first big change, I think. In the number 10, no longer is going to be Danica Patrick. We have Eric Almirola driving for Stewart-Haas in that Ford Fusion. Smithfield transferred from Richard Petty Motorsports. It came with Eric Almirola. They elected to stay with him and sponsor him. So Eric Almirola, remember last year, drove the number 43 Smithfield Ford for Petty. This year moving to the number 10 for Stewart-Haas Racing. And I think for Eric Almirola, this is going to be a make or break season. And maybe not necessarily the first half, but once he gets settled in with Stewart-Haas Racing and once he finds his groove, because you're going to see whether or not, how long his career is going to last, because he's been driving full-time since 2012, has one career win. Came at Daytona, race was rain delayed. I mean, would he have won that race if it was not rain shortened? I don't know. He was one of the only 3 cars on the track that day that wasn't falling apart into 3 different pieces. But you have to remember that this is NASCAR is losing sponsors. Sponsors don't want to sponsor people who aren't winning. And for Eric Almirola, he's with a winning team now. Richard Petty Motorsports, not necessarily a winning team, and we'll talk about Richard Petty Motorsports later. But Eric Almirola has never really had the proper equipment he's needed to win. Now he has that. He knows he can win in this equipment. You can win championships in this equipment. Stewart-Haas Racing has 2 championships, and they were close last year. Kevin Harvick has been absolutely brilliant in the Stewart-Haas stable. Has been the leader of it, so he knows he can win races. He knows he can win a championship behind this team. What we're going to try and figure out now is, does he have the talent? So that's Eric Almirola. Big year for him. Denny Hamlin in the number 11, driving for Joe Gibbs Racing, the FedEx Toyota. That's the same as the last year. Another big change, Ryan Blaney moving to Penske. Remember last year drove the number 21 Ford for the Wood Brothers. This year moving into the Penske stable. And again, Wood Brothers and Penske, they're technically aligned. So that's as far as sharing data and information with the engines, the chassis, and they operate out of the same shop. So Ryan Blaney, I believe, certainly would already be comfortable, and he's definitely in winning equipment. He won a race last year with the Wood Brothers, which normally I wouldn't necessarily consider winning equipment, but he showed that the Wood Brothers, they have what it takes. Their technical alliance has made the Wood Brothers a threat week in and week out. Maybe not necessarily for a championship, although I will say he got very close to going to Miami. I believe he was just 19 points out maybe of the transfer. So Ryan Blaney, I mean, definitely he's in equipment that can win a championship and win races, and I certainly believe he's got the talent. So I think this move for him is not a huge move, but it's a good move. I really do believe that it's a good move for Ryan Blaney. Number 13, Ty Dillon will continue to drive for Germain Racing. He'll have Geico on board. They're returning, as well as Twisted Tea. No changes there for that number 13 team. Moving on, and another Stewart-Haas Racing car, Clint Boyer. He will drive the Rush Trucks Center Ford Fusion. No changes there either. And Clint Boyer, again, remember, he came over to Stewart-Haas last season, at the start of last season, and one of the big things for him was he really wanted to prove that he belonged. And he, I think, like Eric Almirola, is very much in a situation where he needs to win. And you know what? Last year, towards the end of the season, that team made great strides, and I believe they came close a few times, not where they were leading laps, but they came close towards the end of the races. They were there at the end when it counts. So definitely look for the 14 car. I'm very curious to see if he can use that that late season momentum, carry it into this season, and start off right, maybe even winning the Daytona 500. Last year, his teammate did it. Why can't he? In the number 17, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he's driving for Jack Roush Fenway Racing, that Fastenal Ford Fusion. They got a new look, but other than the paint scheme, everything's the same. Kyle Busch in the number 18 Joe Gibbs Toyota. He's the next driver up. M&M's Interstate Batteries returning. Certainly M&M's and Mars products, so it would be typical to assume that at some point, as the past years have shown, that Pedigree will be on the car or Skittles. So that's Kyle Busch. Daniel Suarez, number 19 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota as well. Teammate to Kyle Busch. His sponsors are Aris Modems. We got Stanley Tools and Peak Antifreeze. They're hopping over. Remember Peak last year with Matt Kenseth for a few races. They've extended their deal with Joe Gibbs Racing, and they've elected to sponsor a few races for that 19 car of Daniel Suarez. But no big changes in that 19 stable. This next one is fairly big, I believe, but it could also, I don't know. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. So in the number 20 car, Eric Jones is going to drive it. Now remember, this was the car that Matt Kenseth drove last season, and the car was very good all season long, and so was Matt Kenseth. They were just never able to close out the deal until the second last race of the season when they won at Phoenix. But really, the 20 team was very good all year, and they made the playoffs. Just missed the round of 8 by a matter of points. So Eric Jones, remember, and last year he drove the number 77 Furniture Row Toyota, and he was a very good driver, and you could see every time they returned to a racetrack, he made improvements. He always was working to find that extra, and unfortunately at Kansas last year it cost him, where he almost rolled over. But his finishes towards the end of the last season were very good, and actually it was so good to a point where he won a pole at the Bristol night race and ended up almost winning the race. Kyle Busch outran him in just that last set of laps after that last caution. But certainly Eric Jones, I think that's somebody you're going to have to watch for. He can definitely win a race. He can, I think, in this equipment, definitely win a championship. It's just a matter of how long is it going to take for him to get to victory lane. It'll be his first win in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, but again, plenty of experience. He won the Camping World Truck Series championship a few years back and was pretty close 2 years ago to winning the Xfinity Series championship, but was outrun by his teammate Daniel Suarez. In the number 21, and this one I think is a pretty important change. And the number 21 is going to be Paul Menard now, driving for the Wood Brothers in their Ford Fusion. Menards is coming over with Paul, and they will sponsor races on that number 21 Motorcraft, and Ford will also still continue to sponsor that number 21. And last year, remember, he was with that Richard Childress Racing in the number 27. But I think this one's particularly important because last season, I touched on it earlier, I don't think a lot of people really thought that the Wood Brothers were going to get to victory lane. And I was at Pocono when Ryan Blaney won the race, and I think a lot of fans, while it was a nice moment for the sport to see a young guy get to victory lane, somebody who certainly in the future is going to carry the NASCAR name, and has just racing in his heritage and blood. While that's nice to see, it also I think brought light to a lot of other people that this technical alliance between Penske and the Wood Brothers is something really big, and it's something that you should not underestimate the Wood Brothers. So for Paul Menard now, here's where I'm at in thinking about Paul Menard. He has been driving since, I want to say 2005 or 2006 in the Cup Series full time. Way back when with Dale Earnhardt Incorporated in the number 15. Then he moved over to Richard Childress and Germain. He's been all over the place. But here's how I look at it. Paul Menard is running out of time. He has one career win in maybe 12 full-time seasons. He is not a driver. I'm just sort of waiting for him to give up. That's my thoughts on Paul Menard, because you never hear about him up at the front of the pack unless it's Daytona or Talladega, in which just about anybody can win. And now he's in equipment that can win races, should win races, and last year was pretty much in contention for a championship. They were doing very good in the playoffs. So for me, if Paul Menard is finishing in the 20s, in the 30s, that's not good enough. He has to go out there and prove to everybody, I'm a racer, I belong. I'm not just here because my dad sponsors me in Menards. So he really has to prove himself this year to a lot of people, including me. And if he can do that, then I think he's somebody who might be able to visit victory lane once, maybe twice. But I certainly wouldn't like it if he wasn't able to, bring on and move forward with the heritage of the Wood brothers. I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we'll have to see. In the number 22, Joey Logano driving for Penske. He's in the Shell Pennzoil Ford, same there. William Byron in the number 24, Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet, Liberty University, and Exalta jumping on board to sponsor him. Last year, remember, he didn't drive. This upcoming Daytona 500 will be his first Cup start. He's never driven in the Cup Series before. Almost won the Truck Series Championship 2 years ago. Last year, won the Xfinity Series Championship in the number 9 with Junior Motorsports. And, this is somebody who's super relatable, I think, to a lot of people, and is going to be somebody very well liked. And, there's something about him that's just naturally likable. And on top of that, he's a great driver. For anybody listening who hasn't heard the story, he was discovered on iRacing, which is a simulation racing. I don't want to say video game because it's really not a video game, but it's sort of a racing simulator that you can play online and you race against other people, and that's how he got discovered. And he's just been on a roll. I think 2014 was the first time I heard about him and saw him race. Or maybe it was 2015, and he was driving the K&N series, and he was I think he had like 9 wins or something, and then won at New Hampshire. So he's somebody who definitely can win, and he's in winning equipment. We saw a few weeks ago, actually not even a few weeks ago, a few days ago, that 24 car was testing in Las Vegas, and they were running at the top of the charts. They had some of the fastest speeds. So certainly look for William Byron. I think just because he's a rookie, that doesn't mean anything. Definitely look for William Byron. He's going to be a threat this year. We'll get 2 more in before we head to commercial. Ryan Newman, number 31, Richard Childress Racing Chevrolet, Caterpillar jumping on board. Best Pro Shops making a return to the number 31 with Cabela's. They'll sponsor him for a few races, I believe, including the upcoming Daytona 500. Otherwise, no changes. Matt DiBenedetto driving the number 32, Go Fast Racing Ford Fusion with Can-Am. And again, that's really all the same. So we're going to run to a commercial break, and then we'll be right back here with NASCAR Nation on 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com. When we come back, we'll finish up this roster. We're about halfway through, and then we'll talk about the schedule and all the fun new tracks we get to visit this year. 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com, live from the Killarney's Public House Studios. This is NASCAR Nation. Welcome back, everybody. If you're just joining us, you've missed the first 20 minutes of the show. We went over a few of the changes that are going on with the drivers this year, and we're going to continue with that. We only got up to car number 32. We got a few more left. Car number 34 this year will be Michael McDowell. That's a change from his ride last year with the number 95 Levine Family Racing Chevrolet. He'll be driving with Loves on the hood and Speedco as well. In the number 37, Chris Buescher in the JTG Daugherty Chevrolet. Again, Scott's products will return, and all is the same in the number 37 stable. Car number 38 will once again be driven by David Reagan for Front Row Motorsports, teammate to the number 34, and he will have Camping World on board as the primary sponsor. Again, all is the same. Kurt Busch, driving the number 41 Stewart-Haas Racing Ford Fusion, Haas Automation returning on board. Yes, everything is the same, sort of, for that team. Kurt Busch only got signed to a one-year contract for this year. Remember, his contract ran out after 2017. They were in talks seemingly forever about whether or not he was going to drive again this year, and eventually, just recently, it was released, I think, just after the new year. So it's a one-year contract. He has to prove that he still has what it takes. I truly believe he did. He does. Last year's Daytona 500 winner didn't have a whole lot of luck in the season itself. So for me, I think if he wants to continue racing, he's really going to have to fight for it and really prove himself and go out and win on multiple tracks this season in order for a sponsor to come around or for another team to come up with another offer. In the number 42, Kyle Larson in the Credit One Chip Ganassi Racing Chevrolet. Target, remember, they have left motorsports, for at least for now. They have left with Chip Ganassi Racing on the IndyCar Racing Series and the NASCAR Series as well. So Credit One filling in those races, and certainly it looks like they're going to be, again, a competitive team just as they were last year. So look for that 42 on track. In the number 43, the famed 43, Darrell Wallace Jr. for Richard Petty Motorsports. This year, a Chevrolet, driving for Click and Close, STP, and the U.S. Air Force. Remember, last year was a very odd year for Darrell Wallace Jr. He had sponsorship through the first 13 or 14 races in the Xfinity Series before, nobody renewed. So Jack Roush said, "I'm sorry, man, you can't drive anymore. I don't have any sponsors for you." So took some time off when Eric Almirola was injured in a horrible crash last year at Kansas Speedway. Darrell Wallace Jr. drove a few of those races starting at Pocono, filling in that number 43. And after that, made a return to the Camping World Truck Series where he won, and then that win was encumbered. Something on the car just didn't pass NASCAR inspection. I don't remember what it was, but so certainly he proved he had what it took. And he was doing very well in the Xfinity Series. I believe he was fourth in points when, unfortunately, that his contracts ran out as far as sponsors go. So I think for Darrell Wallace, this is a pretty important year. Obviously, you do want to prove that you belong on the Cup level, but at the same time, you have to remember, too, Richard Petty Motorsports is now, they're no longer Ford, they are Chevrolet, they are technically aligned now with Richard Childress Racing. So it'll be very interesting to see how this Petty-Childress relationship works out. I think it'll work out good. It's just a matter of, how long is it going to take for them to, A, get used to it, and B, how long, obviously, is it going to take for them to get back to victory lane. It's been a few years since that 43 car has pulled in a victory lane. It'd be nice to see it go back. In the number 47 JTG Daugherty car, AJ Allmendinger driving the Kroger Chevrolet. All is the same there. In the number 48, Jimmy Johnson, 7-time series champion for Hendrick Motorsports. Lowe's continues their long-time relationship with Jimmy Johnson. All is the same there. Of course, returning with Chad Knaus. How could you break up that duo? It's iconic. The number 78, Martin Truex Jr., last year's champion, returns to Furniture Row Racing with Bass Pro Shops. 5 Hour Energy will also sponsor, as well as Auto Owners Insurance. We'll all hop on board at some point in that 78 car, and all is the same there. Number 88, is Alex Bowman this year. That's right, Alex Bowman driving the number 88. Remember, Dale Earnhardt Jr. retiring from full-time NASCAR competition at the end of last season. Alex Bowman drove the 88 in 2016 when Dale Earnhardt Jr. sat out for the second half of the season due to his really awful concussion. And so Alex Bowman, remember, I think a lot of people are thinking, like, what are you doing putting this kid behind the wheel? He's barely had any experience. You're wrong, because Alex Bowman's driven a few seasons full-time on the Cup level and the Xfinity level. I actually still remember when he drove the 99 Toyota in the Xfinity Series in like 2014 or 15. And so he has the experience. And when he drove that 88 car, he was very, very good at most tracks. He got caught up in a lot of unfortunate stuff. At Talladega, wrecked from third because the car got loose under him. At Charlotte, he was doing very well. I believe he was in the top 5 or top 10, and his tire blew. At Loudon, was on track for a top 5 finish. Tire blew. And at Phoenix, it really looked like he was going to win at Phoenix. I remember that race, the fall race of 2016. He was so close to winning, and a caution came out, and on the restart, Kyle Busch ran right in the back of him, sent him up the track. Matt Kenseth and Alex Bowman wrecked. But, you know, Alex Bowman, he's got the talent. He's just got to find victory lane. That's all there is, and he's definitely got the equipment to do that. He's proven he can do that, or get close to that, I should say. But certainly look for that 88 car of Alex Bowman. I think that 88 will get back to victory lane this year. And finally, this is the last of our drivers that we have. Casey Kane for Levine Family Racing, driving the Chevy Camaro ZL1, the Procore Chevrolet. And this is a big switch from him because he was with a powerhouse team, Hendrick Motorsports. He drove that number 5 last year. This year, not so much. So it'll be interesting to see how Casey Kane does. He was looking pretty good in the speed tests at Las Vegas recently. Of course, now driver changes aren't the only changes you come to expect every season. There are some schedule changes. I'm going to run through the first half of the season relatively quickly from Daytona to the return to Daytona in July, because that's all mostly the same. It's really the second half of the season where the changes are. So upcoming, actually this Sunday as we speak, is the Advanced Auto Parts Clash, formerly known as the Busch Clash, the Bud Shootout, the Sprint Unlimited. It's gone by like 20 different names. But that returns, that's this Sunday, February 11th at 3 p.m. And then the following Thursday, February 15th, are the Can-Am dual qualifying races that lead up to Sunday, the February 18th at 2:30 p.m., the Daytona 500. That's on Fox, but we'll talk about that in next week's show. Then you go to Atlanta Motor Speedway 1 week later for the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500. The Pennzoil 400 at Las Vegas is 1 week after. That's March 4th. The cars will return to Phoenix for, I believe, the last race that will be formally known as Phoenix Raceway before ISM Connect sponsorship kicks in, and they will sponsor the facility. It will become ISM Raceway, but I don't believe that's until the fall race. So last race at Phoenix, Sunday, March 11th at 3:30. Then they'll go to Auto Club, and Auto Club, that's one of my favorite races of the year to watch. It always comes down. It's always an exciting finish. And I don't know, it really, since like 2013, it's just been one of the most exciting finishes every season. The STP 500 at Martinsville follows that March 25th. Then NASCAR, they get a week off, and they will return Sunday, April 8th for the O'Reilly Auto Parts 500 at Texas. Following that, Bristol, the Food City 500, Thunder Valley, April 15th. The Toyota Owners 400. That moves, remember, for the past few years, it's been a day race. They're moving it back to a night race at Richmond Raceway. That's April 21st. That's a Saturday. The next weekend, Talladega Superspeedway, the Geico 500. That's Sunday, April 29th. The AAA Dover Drive for Autism 400. That's at Dover, Sunday, May 6th. The Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series then will go to Kansas Saturday, May 12th. That, again, is a night race. They will go to Kansas. They'll race 400 miles. And then it's All-Star Week. They'll race the All-Star Open, which of course is the qualifiers to get into the All-Star race. And then of course you'll have the All-Star race on Saturday, May 19th. That's at 8 p.m. The following weekend, Memorial Day weekend, the Coca-Cola 600, the longest race on the schedule for those cars. Following that, Pocono will be on June 3rd, the Pocono 400. And again, actually, this is really the first big change of the year. Dover's usually that first June weekend, and then Pocono usually is the weekend after. They moved it up this year. So Dover, about a month earlier. They've done that before. I think they did that 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But it's Dover Spring Race has moved around a lot. The Firekeepers Casino 400 is at Michigan Sunday, June 10th. And at that point, you're almost halfway through the year. The Toyota Save Mart 350, that is at Sonoma, the first road course of this upcoming season. Will be the first of 3 road courses. That's Sunday, June 24th. Then the Monster Energy Cup Series will go to Chicagoland. Remember that since 2011 has been the playoff opener, and they've moved it back to its weekend in the summer, so it'll be Sunday, July 1st at 2:30. It is a day race, although I have to say I would love to see them go night racing at Chicagoland again. We haven't seen that since 2010, I believe, 2010 or 2009, and it was only a night race for a few seasons, so it'd be really cool to see that go back to night racing. And then the following weekend, the Coke Zero 400, the unofficial halfway point of the season, when they return to Daytona, that's Saturday, July 7th. The Quaker State 400 at Kentucky will be the following weekend, again another night race. New Hampshire, they will race only once next season, and that will be at July 29th. July 22nd will be New Hampshire next season, and or the only race at New Hampshire next season, which I sort of like that move. New Hampshire was never the most exciting racetrack. I felt like, I don't know, it was just not as exciting as other racetracks. I do like the racetrack, and I would love to visit, but just the racing itself was just never as good. Then the drivers head to Pocono again. That's Sunday, July 29th for the Overton's 400. The following weekend, the second of 3 road course races, the Monster Energy Cup Series visits Watkins Glen International. That's Sunday, August 5th. And then the following weekend, August 12th, is Michigan. The Bass Pro Shops NRA night race, when they return to Bristol, one of the most exciting races on the season, Saturday, August 18th, when most everybody's going back to college. The Bojangles Southern 500 is 2 weeks later at Darlington, and that I went to Darlington 3 years ago, I believe. It was 2015, and it was the first time that they moved it back to Labor Day weekend, and all the cars and all the teams were, and they had the throwback, and that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun to be a part of, and to get to see all that NASCAR heritage that I didn't get to live through. Was so much fun being a part of, and I'm glad that they're continuing that tradition and keeping the Southern 500 Memorial Day weekend. Labor Day weekend. Woo. One of the biggest changes, I believe, in this whole schedule is that you haven't heard a track that's usually in July that's now in September. That is the Big Machine Brickyard 400 at Indianapolis. That is moved. That is the final regular season race in 2018. That's certainly, I believe, going to be huge because Indianapolis has produced winners like Jimmy Johnson, a lot of guys who, last year Casey Kane won the race. A few years ago, Paul Menard won the race. That was their ticket into the playoffs. This year is one last chance, and that's it. Then, of course, as you've probably picked up, you move into the playoffs. The Monster Energy Cup Series kicks off the playoffs at Las Vegas Sunday, September 16th at 3 o'clock. Richmond also moves into the playoffs. They are no longer the cutoff race before the last race before the playoffs, I should say. And they will be Saturday, September 22nd, a night race in the playoffs. And then the first round cutoff race is the Bank of America 500. That's moving from the first race of round 2 to the cutoff race of round 1. And what's so exciting about that is it's not going to be the 1.5 mile track that fans are used to seeing. It's going to be the Charlotte Roval. 17 turns, all calamity. It's going to be the first time these guys are at the racetrack, so certainly I think expect a lot of cautions that race. It'll be an exciting race weekend, and I'll still get to cover that because NASCAR Nation will be back later in the year, so super excited to get to cover that race. And, of course, the Charlotte Roval brand new again, so that'll be a lot of fun. Dover moves from the cutoff race of round 1 to the first race of round 2. That's Sunday, October 7th. Following that's the Alabama 500 on October 14th and the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas, October 21st, and that's the round of 12. The round of 8 this year, the first Data 500 at Martinsville, that stays the same. Texas as well stays the same. But the final race of the season, that will officially be ISM Raceway at that point. Remember, they're moving the start-finish line from what will be the back straightaway, where it is now on the front straightaway. They're moving it to the part of that dog leg right off of turn 2. So look for that. I don't know if that's going to be a huge difference, but it'll be a difference. It'll definitely be a difference. And then, of course, championship weekend with the Ford EcoBoost 400. That's at Homestead, Miami, Sunday, November 18th at 3 p.m. That's so far out. We just ran you through 39 weeks of racing. It's a lot of racing. And then some other changes that are coming to NASCAR this year. Chevrolet, you heard me say it before, Chevrolet is discontinuing the SS. So as far as their racing goes, they've elected to replace the Chevrolet SS and use the Chevy Camaro ZL1. And originally my thought was that, it's going to take them a little while to get into the habit of things with the new car. They're going to have to work with the new car, a lot of new things to work around. And, they're not going to win, probably for the first 7-8 weeks. And I think I'm wrong now because looking at the speeds at the test, the Camaros topped both tire tests. One of them was at the Charlotte Roval, I believe, and I think Chase Elliott topped it. And at Las Vegas, it was William Byron. So I really don't know. I think Chevy's brought a good package. I don't know what they did, but I like it. And the new body of the Camaro, it looks really nice. So look for the new body of that new Chevy Camaro ZL1 on track. A few last things. The downforce of the cars have been reduced. That's something that's happened with all the changes in the past years, but it's now being reduced to 1,650 pounds. There is this year going to be a common radiator and oil cooler. They've been manufacturer specific, I believe. I don't believe they've been specific per team, but NASCAR now is mandating that it's the same across the board, so a little bit more standardization. In addition, they're going to do the same with common flat splitter. So the splitter right on the nose of the car below the fascia, it's the part that seals the car to the ground, try and get less air under the car. That will be the same through every race team. The spoiler, the size is about the same. I believe it's just a little tiny bit smaller. It's 2 inches and 2.375 inches high and 61 inches wide. And, of course, that does not include super speedways. They use their different spoiler there. Last year, there were a few rear gears. This year, only one rear gear. They'll reduce the aerodynamic fans that help in the back, and there will be enhanced real-time data. That's most of the changes for 2018. We'll go right to commercial, and we still have more to talk about for 2018. Stick around on 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com. 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com. Welcome back, everybody, to NASCAR Nation. So today's show, we've hit the driver roster, we've hit the schedule, and, of course, getting ready for that first race of the season, the biggest one of the year, Daytona 500. But first, we've got one of the best, in my opinion, exhibitions in all of sports. We got it's been the Busch Clash, it's been the Bud Shootout, it was the Sprint Unlimited, and it has gone back to the first and probably the best name, the Clash, Advanced Auto Parts sponsoring. So here's how that's going to work. That's this Sunday at 3 p.m. following Daytona 500 qualifying. It's going to be at Fox Sports 1. And in order to qualify for the Clash, drivers who've won the Coors Light Pole Award in 2000. Actually, I can't say Coors Light Pole Award anymore because Coors Light left NASCAR. They departed ways. So if they won the Pole Award in 2017, or if they won a Daytona 500 pole in their career. In addition, all 2017 playoff drivers, even those who didn't win a pole, will be eligible for the event. So between these requirements, 20 drivers are eligible to race. That's Ryan Blaney, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Eric Jones, Matt Kenseth, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Larson, defending winner Joey Logano, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Martin Truex Jr., Austin Dillon, Jimmy Johnson, Danica Patrick, Casey Kane, Jamie McMurray, and Ryan Newman. Those are all the eligible drivers. However, Dale Earnhardt Jr. announced, he obviously way back last year, almost a complete year by now, announced that at the end of the 2017 season he was no longer driving full-time. So Dale Earnhardt Jr. not driving in the Clash. Matt Kenseth doesn't have a ride, not driving in the Clash. And and Danica Patrick, she said she's only driving the Daytona 500 in NASCAR and then the Indianapolis 500 in the Indy cars. After that, she's calling it quits in racing. So you'll have a field of 17 drivers driving in a two-segment race. It's broken down. It's a 75-lap race. The first segment's 25 laps. Second segment, 50 laps. And this will be, again, at 3 p.m., 187.5 miles on Fox Sports 1. That's following the Monster Energy Cup Series qualifying for the Daytona 500. And so Super Speedway qualifying for Daytona and Talladega is different than your average qualifying because you're only sending one car on the track out at a time. And they have a certain time that they need to qualify by. If they don't, they lose their qualifying position. Remember, 36 teams have charters. They will be in the Daytona 500. They know that. 4 teams or more will attempt to qualify for the Daytona 500. Their starting positions really rely on those Can-Am dual races, the qualifying races, to finalize the starting grid for the Daytona 500. So we'll talk more about the Can-Am duels next show because we'll be right in between, actually, when the Clash happen and when the Can-Am duels occur. And so we'll go over the lineup and we'll go over everything that happened in the Clash. Basically, this Sunday review will be our next show. And, of course, before that, you want to get the cars back out on track and warmed up and practice. Monster Energy Cup Series practice will occur Saturday, February 10th at 10:35 a.m., 1:05 p.m., and 3:05 p.m. So a few practice sessions that we finally get to hear those cars back on track. We've been waiting all winter, and we're finally gonna hear the roar of the engines, and we'll really see who has what it takes at Daytona this year, who can get the job done in the Clash, the duels, and of course the Daytona 500. Just a few headlines before we go. Again, like I've said, Danica Patrick has secured a ride for the Daytona 500. It was announced that she will team up with Premium Motorsports to drive the number 7 car, which will be sponsored by GoDaddy.com. GoDaddy has been a longtime sponsor of Danica Patrick when she drove in the Verizon IndyCar Series and stayed with her in the transition from IndyCar to NASCAR and then into the Cup Series. GoDaddy dropped sponsorship on Danica at the end of 2015, but they have decided to team up with Patrick in her attempts to race the Daytona 500 and the Indy 500 for the IndyCar Series. Tony Eury Jr. will be the crew chief for Danica, and Eury was Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s crew chief for quite some time at the top level, both at Dale Earnhardt Incorporated and at Hendrick Motorsports, but when he was replaced, he began helping Danica at the Xfinity level. Dale Earnhardt Jr., I know I've said that he's not going to race the Clash. He's retired from full-time competition. He never said he was completely retired, though. That's right. Dale Earnhardt Jr. tweeted last Monday, not yesterday, but the Monday before that he would get back behind the wheel of a NASCAR Xfinity Series race car in the fall race at Richmond Raceway. He'll drive the Chevy Camaro for his team, Dale Jr. Motorsports. But no announcement on the car number or who will be sponsoring him. So he was clear in his tweet, though, that he does hope that he gets to race more than just once. I believe originally last year that he was saying that there was 2 races on his schedule. They just weren't finalized. So we got one of them is Richmond. It's likely he'll either be in the 88 or if he was talking about driving that 8 car, he would love to drive the number 8 if he was able to get the licensing and the rights to use the 8. So we'll see. Maybe he will drive the 8. Wouldn't that be cool for Dale Jr. fans if you got to see him drive the 8 one more time? That would be pretty cool. So that's Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the Xfinity Series. Alex Bowman, who replaced Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the number 88 car, picked up a new sponsor, one that's familiar to Hendrick Motorsports, though Valvoline and Hendrick Motorsports have extended their partnership through the 2022 season, which includes being a primary sponsor of Alex Bowman's 88 for select races. This upcoming season, I believe they're going to have 2 races as primary sponsor. It would be pretty cool if they got to do Darlington again. They did Darlington with Dale Earnhardt Jr. in 2015. They had a nice throwback paint scheme. So it would be pretty cool if they got to do another throwback paint scheme with Valvoline. And finally, during media days for this upcoming season, drivers were asked they were asked their opinions about various topics, one of them being the schedule. Kevin Harvick, he's been very vocal with his comments all season long, made 2 statements. The schedule's too long, the championship race should be rotated. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to talk about what is 39 weeks of racing too long? Should they move and rotate the championship? I love the idea of that, but we don't have enough time to conquer that topic. Tweet me your thoughts. Remember, NASCAR Nation RU on Twitter. And you can follow us, and you can follow myself. That is at Passero Jr., Passerojr. You can follow 1077 The Bronc at 1077 The Bronc FM.